All right, first start off with a Michigan quarantine update. I'm sure many of you know that there was a proposed exterior firewood quarantine that went out this year. It's saying that any out-of-state origin firewood must be heat treated. It's 60 degrees Celsius for 60 minutes, which translates to 140 degrees Fahrenheit. And it must have that certificate. We had a public comment period open from October 14th to November 19th. And that closed, and right now we are currently in the process of evaluating those comments and working on revisions to the quarantine. In fact, just this morning I sent an email to Sue Tangor about getting the firewood working group together to go over comments and revisions for that. So we anticipate getting a signature for this firewood quarantine sometime, hopefully early this year, and it will go into effect this year in 2022. In September of 2020, the interior and exterior hemlock woolly adelgid quarantines were both updated. And we at MDARD were currently in discussions on evaluating whether or not we think that there should be a spotted lanternfly exterior quarantine. One of the tricky parts with this is that there are multiple pathways of introduction. So, what would we be quarantining? Obviously plant material is one of them, but it also can come in on cars and rail cars, and there's so many different pathways that it would be really hard to implement and enforce. But we are in discussions, and we've been talking with other states and what they're doing, and we'll update you as that moves along. Sorry, my slide's not changing. Hold on. There we go. All right. You probably heard about the balsam woolly adelgid find. So balsam woolly adelgid is a pest of true fir trees. That means Abies species. So Douglas fir is not a true fir. It's pseudotsuga, so it does not affect that. I noticed after I already sent this, and it was too late to change it, but it says July 2020. It's supposed to be July 2021, just so you know. In Kent County, 8 infested Fraser fir trees were reported to missing. We sent out an inspector from that district, an MDARD nursery inspector from that district, to check it out in July of 2021, who thought it did look like balsam woolly adelgid. We sent samples to MSU. Deb McCullough looked at it and then ultimately sent it to U.S. Forest Service Nathan Havel to get an official identification. After it was officially identified as balsam woolly adelgid, a press release went out on August 16th, and an immediate survey of just that surrounding area was done, and there were no additional signs of infestation beyond those 8 trees. We convened a balsam woolly adelgid response group that consisted of people from MDARD, from DNR, from MSU, to talk about what would be the best way to respond. And we decided to do a survey of the plants. And the survey kicked off December 8th and 9th. We had 20 pesticide and plant pest management division plant inspectors that went out, and including myself and Rob, and our supervisor Robin came and participated, and our deputy director also came and participated. And we surveyed 670 of 977 properties that were within the survey area within 2 days. You see the map that is to the left, and that the green properties are all the ones that were surveyed. The ones that look tan have not been done yet, and the red were where permission was denied. Now, it's important to note that we do have a balsam woolly adelgid quarantine in place, and within that quarantine, we do have the legal right to access any property. But we decided at this stage, while we're still assessing if there's any other infested trees, we, just to, I guess, work with the community, and if anyone didn't want us to go on their property, we weren't going to go on. And then later, if we have reason to believe we need to go on their property, then we would address it at that time. So we gave people the choice. As you can see, almost most people said yes and didn't have a problem. We sent out communication ahead of time, and we contacted the local police and the local municipalities, and, and had real good, and had press releases, so there was good communication. So people were expecting us, and we really communicated the threat to our native balsam fir trees, and we had a lot of community support, which was really great to see. Surveys are going to continue into spring, and the location of all the fir trees that we found were recorded so they could be re-examined later. As of now, we did take a few samples, but nothing was found that looked real symptomatic of BWA. We don't think we found any. So as said, there's no additional signs of infestation, but we aren't done. And one thing that was really cool was that at MDAR, we finally got access to GIS for our field staff. So we used the program field maps from ArcGIS, and people were able to go in real time, color these properties green if they, had access and were able to survey, or red if permission was denied, and make points of locations of fir trees and make notes, like they saw symptomatic, or in one case, one place I was at, the tree, there was no obvious BWA signs, but the tree looked like it was in decline. So I made a note, trees in decline, no signs of BWA. But so when people go next year, they'll be able to draw that out. Anyway, we were really excited to finally get, access to some good technology that will make surveying easier for us. The infested trees and any nearby surrounding fir on that property were removed. Also, that's supposed to say 2021, in December of 2021. We did that on purpose. That's when the risk of spread is the lowest, because they're not mobile at that time. There's no crawlers. They're, feeding, and they're embedded into the tree. The trees were chipped and buried under 4 feet of earth. So now all known infested trees have been removed. And we did send an inspector out to verify. He took these photographs that you see, that the trees were removed and they were buried under that 4 feet of earth. The company did a good job. We were happy. Okay, moving along, hemlock woolly adelgid. As most of you know, 5 counties are infested, 110 miles of shoreline infested. In 2021, 2 outlying populations were detected: Pentwater State Game Area, which was treated, and the Sleeping Bear Dunes National Lakeshore, which was eradicated. Treatments continue in state parks and northern areas. Local parks, communities, and private landowners are also treating in the core infestation areas. As you guys know, SISMAs are also involved in treatment. I know the West Michigan SISMA has done a lot of treatment, and the new West Michigan HWA coordinator came on, Drew Rayner, who I know you guys all know. I believe he's on, so Drew, if you want to add anything, feel free. But he's here to help out with any HWA questions, treatment, consultation, outreach materials, and more. And outreach efforts, in the community where the infestation lies, continue. So spotted lanternflies, there's still no evidence of spotted lanternfly populations in Michigan, but we do have a spotted lanternfly readiness team. It consists of members from MDAR, DNR, MSU, and USDA. We have a communications and planning subgroup. The communications group has been developing outreach materials like posters and handouts and pamphlets to give out to conservation districts and SISMAs, as well as management response materials that include talking points, frequently asked questions, and management guidelines. We also have been doing outreach to the public and the industry, such as the Michigan green industry. We did a Not My Species talk on it, which Sarah mentioned earlier in her talk. We did an MDAR podcast, and we've been doing, press releases. A survey will be conducted this summer in 2022. It's going to be a visual survey of high-risk sites, and it will be conducted by MDAR staff and the Southwest by Southwest and BCK SISMAs. Research is underway on native predators and fungal pathogens, and so that will be, we'll see if anything develops from that in the future going forward. All right. Asian longhorn beetle, also not known to be in Michigan. MDARD is going to conduct a a 2022 ALB survey in all nursery inspection districts. The survey will be conducted by MDARD nursery inspectors, and it will run into mid to late March. 3 high-risk sites will be surveyed per inspection district, and we are going to be using that same GIS field map software that we use for BWA to track all areas that were surveyed and any suspect trees. You know, we're going to be focusing obviously on red maple in these surveys. This was done last year in 2021. They visited 5 high-risk sites last year, and nothing was found. No ALB was found, but we're doing it again this year, and we're really happy to have that new technology at our disposal for tracking our surveys. Lymantria dispar, formerly known as gypsy moth, an aerial survey was conducted by our friends in the Forest Resources Division. They flew over 24 million acres. Over 1 million acres of defoliation was mapped. The hope is that the 2022 population will collapse in many areas, and that lower levels of defoliation are expected this year across the state as a whole. On to oak wilt. Detection, treatment, and awareness efforts continue for this. Again, our friends in Forest Resources Division are doing herbicide trials, so the trial epicenter eradication efforts continue. A lab sample or a specialist finding a pressure pad is the only way to confirm oak wilt, and a decision tree is available for those getting oak wilt inquiries. Beech leaf disease. This is also not known to be in Michigan, but it is good. It is important to note that it occurs in Ontario, just 15 miles from Detroit. Survey efforts continue across southern Michigan. Right now, no quarantine is in place because the dispersal is not well understood, although we do have research going into that. And this year, beech leaf disease was placed on the Michigan watch list. So the DNR Forest Resources Division, and Kevin, I see your 5-minute warning. They have a Michigan Forest Action Plan. This addresses the future of Michigan's forests, many challenges, strategies for management, preservation, and protection, addressing forest diversity, insects and diseases, climate change, wildfire, human use, and more. And if you have any more questions about this, you can follow up with Sue Tangora or James Weefrich or Simeon Wright from Forest Resources Division. All right, Michigan's Wildlife Action Plan. This is from the Wildlife Division. It calls for conservation partners to work together to manage habitat and invasive species to make places healthier for wildlife and people, to conduct research and surveys to improve how we conserve wildlife and its habitats, and teach people about wildlife, protect natural places for wildlife and people. The action is to prioritize outcomes for focal species and habitats, and on the horizon is the Recovering America's Wildlife Act, in parentheses, RAWA. And Ryan, if you want to add anything to that, feel free. All right. DNR Wildlife Division update. There's a lot on this slide, and I know I'm running out of time, so I'll try to go through it kind of quick. And any questions regarding anything on this slide can be directed to Ryan Wheeler. Feral swine. There's a statewide surveillance, a partnership with the USDA, and there are very few confirmations in 2021. eDNA research is being done for better detection. Feral cats, complex issue, resources are in development. Free-roaming cats can harm localized wildlife populations. I will just say on a note, I used to do invasive species work in Hawaii, and feral cats were a major issue there as well. Mute swan, there's a management and control program policy with the goal of making there be less than 2,000 by 2030, still removing eggs and nests from state lands and private lands under permit. And really good news, the Wildlife Division invasive species, or the TIS invasive species coordinator position has finally been filled. And with that, I would like to introduce to you, who I know you already know, but officially, Katie Griziak has accepted the position as the TIS Invasive Species Coordinator for DNR Wildlife Division. And Katie, would you mind just popping on real quick and introducing yourself?
you're still muted.
Katie, it should be *6 on the phone for unmute.
Right. Well, while she's getting herself unmuted, I will just say they're also supporting TIS plant response efforts. There's Mile Minute-weed response in the Albion area, Japanese stiltgrass in Niles, Washtenaw County and Lenawee County, Himalayan balsam in the eastern UP, kudzu in southwest Michigan, and giant hogweed primarily in the South Lower Peninsula and western Upper Peninsula. And Katie, if you get yourself unmuted, feel free to just, jump in and interrupt me, okay? And then Nutria, we have Nutria reports. There was 68 public reports. Mostly they turned out to be muskrats, and there were no positives. There's a high likelihood of future rain shift in southern Michigan due to climate change, so we're continuing to be on the lookout for that.
So just to get around the technical difficulty here,
Yeah, sure.
I'm just going to say a couple things that I know off the top of my head about Katie. So I'm not even going to try to have all of your educational background, but you have a master's degree and you did research in the UP, and it was focused on plants, and you led the Northwest Michigan ISN for 6 years as a coordinator? 9 years, okay. It's for 9 years. Part of that is a whole bunch of different projects and grants, but part of that is leading the development of the Go Beyond Beauty, and being the chair of the MISC core team. So I'm looking forward to working with Katie. It's gonna be a good time. So
great. Yeah, we're all really excited. Congratulations, Katie, and we're happy to have that position filled, and especially happy to have it filled by you. And then this is an update I got from Kate Letterly from Eagle. She works in the dunes and shorelands area from the Water Resources Division. And so 3,288 miles of shoreline occur across 41 counties. As you know, this is a very dynamic area with a lot and changes quickly in response to water levels, weather, development, and Eagle regulates impacts to these areas like receding shorelines, floodplains, coastal wetlands through a permitting process. So applicants proposing impacts to regulated coastal dune areas are required to address invasive species in their applications. Permits on site in the Hemlock Woolly Adelgid quarantine counties are conditioned with the HWA MDARD contact information for proper removal and handling of hemlock during construction, and permits on site with an oak component are conditioned with oak wilt information that the untimely death of oaks may destabilize a site prematurely. Applicants with invasive species control questions are referred to their local SISMA by Eagle staff. So invasive species can threaten shoreline natural processes, and they compete with native species for resources, and they also can impact the stability of the shoreline. Here's some pictures that were provided of Japanese knotweed along the shore in Muskegon County and Tree of Heaven in Ottawa County. And that is it for questions. And one thing I wanted to add real quick, I know I went a couple minutes over and I apologize. I didn't include this in the slides, but for any NREPA, Natural Resource and Environmental Protection Act, Part 413 plant species violations of restricted or prohibited species can be directed to me. MDARD does regulate that, as well as any permitting for wanting to possess any prohibited or restricted species for educational purposes can also be directed to me. I'm able to issue those issue those permits. And with that, I don't think we really have any time for questions, so you can put it in the chat. My contact information is there, and I am done.